Hello, this is Chapter 18, Respiration, Part 2. When we left off, we were talking about gas transfer in the blood. Carbon dioxide travels three different ways, and the most abundant way is dissolved in the blood fluids in the form of hydrogen carbonate ion. Please realize some blood does transfer in the plasma, and some is combined with hemoglobin, and that's called carbon amino hemoglobin. Okay, most efficient one though is the hydrogen carbonate. When we look at oxygen, oxygen is transported by the hemoglobin. That's why it's very important to have a good hemoglobin and a good iron, because iron is the ion in the hemoglobin. Good. The respiratory process has three different mechanisms for regulation. When you regulate it, there is control of the central nervous system by pathways in the medulla oblongata. Please realize the main control center is the medulla, but also there is the pons, but the pons modifies what is set out in the medulla. It is also modified by receptors detecting blood chemistry. Now, you have three different types of receptors. So here is the brainstem. Remember, the first bump is the medulla, second bump is the pons. So the medulla is where the main control is, and it will send it, this is an example here, medulla and pons. It will send it via the phrenic nerve, and what the phrenic nerve does is it will increase the contraction, or either rate or the amount of the diaphragm. You can also have the vagus nerve, the intercostal nerve. The intercostal nerves go to the intercostal muscles. When you're controlling regulation, there are two different types of controls. There's chemical controls, and there's also baroreceptor or pressure controls. When it comes to the chemical controls, you have two types of chemical controls. One is due to low carbon dioxide, and this is the main one. It's carbon dioxide that controls your breathing rate, and not so much your oxygen. Your carbon dioxide levels will be monitored in the blood, and then that change in blood level will be picked up by the medulla respiratory center in the medulla oblongata. So this is in the brain. So it's called a central chemoreceptor because it is in the central nervous system. Then you have a peripheral nervous system. These are in your neck and aortic arch. The main blood vessels that are leading to your brain will respond to low levels of oxygen, and you don't want low levels of oxygen. And it's kind of a good thing that these are in your neck and aortic arch, because the aortic arch is where the blood with the highest concentration of oxygen should be. And your neck, your carotid artery, will lead up to your brain, and you need good oxygen up to your brain to keep you smart. Okay, so when you look at it, your hypothalamus has your medulla oblongata has the chemical chemoreceptors that are that will control your breathing if your carbon dioxide gets too much. Then your aortic arch is in your your veins, the arteries that go to your body and to your brain. These are chemical receptors. So one chemical receptor is for carbon dioxide being too high. The other chemical receptor is for oxygen being too low. Now, there is a third type of chemical receptor, and this is a baroreceptor. When you have too much Too much strength. Second, I just have to find it here because you have chemical control, and then you have your baroreceptors are in your heart, in the atrium of your heart. The baroreceptors will be stretched. There we go. Your stretch receptors are on your atrium of your lung. No, let's try that again. Your stretch receptors are in your lung tissue. If they are overstretched, that means you are breathing too hard and you'll cause damage. That stretching will send an impulse, a nervous impulse, which is picked up by the respiratory center in the pons and the medulla oblongata, and that will send a message to your, via your phrenic nerve and your external intercostal nerve to slow down muscle contraction, and then you won't contract as much. Good. When it comes to respiratory diseases, you have two types of respiratory diseases. One is the inability to get oxygen in, and the other is the inability to absorb the oxygen. So inadequate breathing, you can have cyanosis. Cyan is blue. This is the blue baby. Hypoxia, which is low oxygen. Hypoxemia, and suffocation, which is death of the cells. You can also have sinusitis. Notice the itis means inflammation, so this is inflammation of your sinus. Deviated septum, which means you have your nose isn't working well. You may also have disorders where there's the inability for oxygen to go across the alveoli. And that happens in a situation where the alveoli are damaged. And if you lose the alveoli walls get damaged, it decreases the efficiency of oxygen absorption. So that's also a disease, or a state of diseases. Okay. There's also other diseases listed here. I basically just want you to know where they are. Now, one problem, if you've taken any first aid, if you have a stab to your heart and air is escaping into the pleural cavity, your chest, your lung will not expand properly, and that's because it's not developing that negative pressure which draws air in. Also, you can get air in your pleural space, which means your elastic lung is not stuck to the side of your chest wall, and it will not expand. If it doesn't expand, it won't increase volume and decrease pressure. When you look at aging, you lose elasticity and compliance, so the lung capacity decreases. Now, just so you're aware, there are a couple of ways to get help with breathing. One of the main problems is when the nose and mouth is crushed or there's blockage of the throat area, and this is a tracheotomy. A tracheotomy is a process of creating the hole. The tracheostomy is the hole it is done. And this is quite obvious in Grey's Anatomy. They're always doing tracheotomies, and other ones. They want to get the airway clean and breathable. There's also the bronchial scope where the air is put down. The thing about this bronchial scope, this is a camera to get in, but they will also intubate or open the airway passage. We talked about the problem of getting air in your pleural space, which will prevent your pleura from sticking your lungs to your rib cage, and that will decrease the amount of volume your chest can rise. Okay, this can, all they need to do is suck the air out or aspirate it. Good. That's pretty much it. There's a bunch of diseases there. Again, just be associated with the diseases with the proper system. When we look at our lung anatomy, we have pleura. The pleura cover the rib cage. These are membrane. You have spiro. This has to do with breathing. So a spirometer measures the breathing volumes. Rhino has to do with your nose. So rhinitis is the inflammation of your nose. Rhinoplasty is a nose job. Attel is incomplete, and pneumo has to do with gases. So if you have pneumonia, you can't get the air into your lungs properly. Or the pneumothorax is the accumulation of air in the pleural space. And that is chapter 18 for you.